Hello and welcome to CNN Newsroom. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Let's get straight to our top stories. ISIS militants appear set to take an entire province in Iraq as the terror group expands its reach. It now controls about 80% of Anbar province. The Islamist extremists have also moved closer to Baghdad's international airport. US health officials are expected to announce in the coming hours if there's another case of Ebola in the state of Massachusetts. These pictures show hazmat crews a short time ago outside the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston. Doctors there are running tests on a patient who is showing signs of Ebola. The patient walked into a clinic on Sunday saying he had been to Liberia. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered more than 17,000 troops near the Ukrainian border to return to their bases. State media reports the troops were there for training exercises, which have ended. Their presence has been seen as a threat to Ukraine. Meantime, Ukrainian emergency workers will be given access later on Monday to the MH17 crash site in eastern Ukraine. They'll collect the personal belongings of those who died in the July 17th crash. The belongings will be gathered from both the site and from locals who stored some of the items. ISIS militants are now on Baghdad's doorstep as the terror group tightens its grip across parts of Iraq and Syria. Islamist extremists now control about 80% of Iraqi's Anbar province, and on Saturday its police chief was killed in a roadside bomb. To the west in Syria, Kobani saw heavy clashes early Sunday before the streets fell silent. ISIS is fighting to take control of that city, which sits close to the Turkish border. US and coalition forces are bombing from the air to halt the ISIS advance. They launched 9 new airstrikes in Syria and Iraq late Saturday and early Sunday, according to CENTCOM. Earlier, I spoke to our senior international correspondent, Ben Wedeman. He discussed how ISIS is expanding its reach and what's believed to be the group's strategy when it comes to Baghdad.
We understand their strategy is clearly to harass the Iraqi capital, but specifically they clearly have their eyes on in some way approaching Baghdad International Airport, basically to shut it down for its symbolic value, given that this is, of course, where people come in and out of when they're heading to Iraq. Can they do it is another question. We know that, for instance, there is a nearby area called Abu Ghraib, which during the day is controlled by the Iraqi army and the police, but at night they pull back to their barracks and their bases, and ISIS operates there. It's only about 12 kilometers from the airport, and in theory, if they were to have surface-to-air missiles, they might be able to hit aircraft. But until now, aircraft coming in and out of Baghdad have approached in a normal manner, unlike in the old days during, for instance, 2006. If you flew into Baghdad, the plane would come in a sort of corkscrew approach. So it does appear that there is some confidence that at the moment Baghdad, the airport of Baghdad at least, is safe. And as far as the city as a whole, this is a huge city. Most of the people here are Shia, very hostile to ISIS. But ISIS clearly would like to make life difficult for the government in Iraq and also the capital as well, as part of their overall tactic of simply disrupting life wherever they can't actually control it. Lynda?
Now, Ben, US Secretary of State John Kerry outlined that the fight against ISIS has to be fought primarily by local forces. He said, and I quote, "It is the Iraqis that will have to take back Iraq." The question is, can they do it without coalition forces on the ground?
No, that's a very good question, and many people are asking themselves the same thing. At the moment, certainly in Anbar province, the Iraqi army is losing ground, losing control. For instance, today we saw the chief of police for Anbar province was killed in a roadside bombing north of Ramadi. That town, which is half under the control of ISIS, half under the control of government. In the government-controlled areas, there is now a 24-hour curfew. Now, the Iraqi army isn't fighting alone in this instance. They are joined by Sunni militias that are hostile to ISIS. But we've spoken to some of the commanders of those militias, and they complain of poor logistics, poor support, a lack of ammunition, and a lack of adequate weapons. And one of those commanders described the Iraqi army in Anbar as simply play acting. So there's not a lot of confidence at the moment that the current setup of forces in Anbar province is going to be able to stop the advances of ISIS in the area, let alone start retaking ground. Now, there are American advisors on the ground. There are American Apache helicopters at Baghdad International Airport, both of which are supporting the Iraqi army, providing training, providing weapons, providing them with air cover where possible. But until now, it hasn't been really effective in turning the tide in Anbar province. Linda?
And along with Anbar province, there's also great concern over the situation in Kobani. The UN Special Envoy for Syria has warned that if the city falls, the civilians inside will likely be massacred. The UN Secretary-General expressed concern and called for action.
With the continuing attacks by ISIL or Daesh, thousands of lives are at stake. I once again call on all the parties that can act to step up to prevent a massacre and protect the civilians in Kobani.
Now, we want to hear from you. The UN Special Envoy warns that hundreds, if not thousands, could be massacred if Kobani does fall to ISIS. So who, if anyone, should be stepping up to stop it? Tweet me at Lynda Kinkade, and let's keep the conversation going. So what is life like for those that fall victim to ISIS? Human Rights Watch says it now has evidence of horrific crimes committed by the terror group against one of their many targets, the Yazidis. When thousands of Yazidis fled an ISIS onslaught on Sinjar in August, many brought with them horrific memories. Families separated, forced religious conversions, forced marriages, sexual assault, even slavery. Now Human Rights Watch has interviewed 76 members of the religious minority about what they witnessed. The interviews and subtitles are by Human Rights Watch. A reoccurring theme, sexual slavery.
جاوی الجناب وجنش خراب لازم كي تشرجن كي وكيمات قالوا يعني هناك 6 سال مزوجين من هناك شهرون باش تجلي تعرفين تلقى بردان وتمود راقصين بسلاح يدخل.
Human Rights Watch also heard from men who described forced conversions to Islam.
درا قلت هجي مثلا بالسلمان نبو أمي جنبوات الدين مرة هجي ما في برا في الدين بلا بجي ما في الدين نافي طبعا مسيري وي كشتن بو هجي قلت بانا مجبور هم قلت نديا كنا قلت نعم 15 سالي وبندا 10 سالي 8 سال 13 12 14 شباب 2 سال باما بون 14 شباب 15 سالي وبندا تا 8 سالي و10 سالي واوانا قلت نقول ميفان بنا بخور القل خوبن ميفان بخور بن ما جماعه ترسان هوالي دوام بريد وان هبون بريد همو قالوا يدريبون او جي مثلا جوان عائله قلنا تقولني فان بنا كدري ما برسكر ما قلنا فان بنا كدري شيخ وان قلنا ترسن قوم ابن قو لازم بحل من افجي تعليم القران وتعليم السلاح وبحلمنا يعني الرمي وان قد تعليم على السلاح والجهاد في سبيل الله.
Many Yazidis have no idea what happened to their loved ones, but what may be worse is knowing what is happening to them now.
من تلفونه خوشكا خوكر زلعمي وين راكر مگو بلکه زلامه وی راکا ملیدا مسیجا لیدا چاره ارهابیا راکر مگو کانی خوای موبایل گو مکشت وگو معایل برندار کرو مهینار دا مستشفى ويجا بشتي برندار بوي بيستو هفرو جامع تشتكش خوش كامل نزاني تلفونا خلقي تلفون كرقو بس علاجك ايش در كفم علاجك اماني خير خدي خلاص كا خوش كامل دستيو دا خوازاما وهي فيها امش دلوتات كان وامش شميت كان بس يخسيرين ما خلاص كا.
CNN has not independently confirmed these accounts, but they are consistent with reports our Enna Corin recently heard in a Yazidi refugee camp in northern Iraq. Again, those accounts are from Human Rights Watch interviews with Yazidis from Sinjar in Iraq. There are new concerns about the spread of Ebola in the US as doctors in Boston work to determine if a new patient has the dreaded virus. Hours ago, a patient was rushed to a Boston hospital after going to a clinic with possible Ebola symptoms. These pictures show medical hazmat crews a short time ago outside Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. The patient reportedly told doctors he had recently been to Liberia, where Ebola has killed the most people in the West African outbreak. This comes on the same day as US health officials announced Ebola has been transmitted inside the US for the first time. A nurse at a Texas hospital contracted the virus while caring for another Ebola patient who died on Wednesday. Doctors say the nurse is in a stable condition. As a precaution, hazardous materials units have already cleaned her car and apartment. The head of the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention explained how the nurse may have become infected despite wearing protective gear.
We don't know what occurred in the care of the index patient, the original patient in Dallas, but at some point there was a breach in protocol, and that breach in protocol resulted in this infection. We know that this individual did provide care to the index patient on multiple occasions, and that care included extensive contact.
Let's go to Dallas, Texas now, where Ed Lavendera has the latest on the nurse's case. And Ed, firstly, talk us through the nurse's condition. How is she doing? And how did this breach of protocol happen?
Well, we're told she's in stable condition. We're told also hospital officials say that there is a low amount of virus in her system at this point, which, if there is a silver line in this case, that could very well be it. The earlier it is detected in humans, the greater medical experts say the greater chance they have of surviving and being able to get that treatment in there as quickly as possible. So there is that bit of good news in all of this. But the very question about how it was that she got infected is a question that CDC officials and hospital officials are now in the process of investigating. We're told that this healthcare worker, this is someone who had close contact, extensive contact with Thomas Eric Duncan while he was being treated here at Texas Health Presbyterian before he died last Wednesday, that this healthcare worker had extensive contact but did wear all of the appropriate attire, the mask, gloves, gowns, all of the protective gear necessary. So they're trying to figure out where this breach might have happened, where things went wrong here at this point, and they're unable to say at this point.
Now, Ed, the nurse's neighbours received a text message, what's called a reverse 911 message. Describe what that message said, and did it create a state of panic among local residents?
You know, I think I don't know if panic is the right word. I don't think we've seen anything like that. But you know, a great deal of anxiety. And you know, right now there are hazmat teams and crews going through her apartment complex and various areas, decontaminating those scenes. Early this morning, we saw a hazmat team here in the garage area and in the open areas of the building where she had driven herself to. So, you know, there is that sort of tension and anxiety that comes with all of this. We were told that many of the people around her in that apartment complex received a reverse 911 call, a phone call saying that, you know, there is someone in your area who has been infected with Ebola, and then a lot of, you know, trying to reassure people that they weren't necessarily in danger or in any kind of harm's way at this point, but the necessary precautions were being taken to make sure everybody, the public health, was taken care of.
Ed Lavendera there in Dallas, Texas. Thanks very much for that update.
You got it.
Meantime, another American Ebola patient is said to be improving. NBC cameraman Ashoka Makpur contracted Ebola while working in Liberia. Doctors treating him in Nebraska say they are happy with his progress, but they stress that, quote, with the Ebola virus, you can never relax. And in Spain, the nurse's assistant who contracted Ebola from an infected patient remains in a stable but serious condition. Teresa Romero Ramos is being treated with an anti-influenza drug. Hospital sources say she's doing better after taking a turn for the worse last week. Two major storms moved through parts of Asia this weekend and they're still causing trouble. Tom Sater has more on that.
Lynda, it's just before the 5 a.m. hour on the east coast of India, where authorities fear that once the sun rises, they could see great despair about 300 to 400 kilometers on the coastline. Visakhapatnam, home to 2 million, but 14 million affected, have lost power and communication is down. At least the storm system is breaking down. We'll have more on that in a moment. And then we have what was our typhoon making landfall in Okinawa is plowing into western Japan and Kyushu. This is the second storm in 2 weeks, the fifth this season, and the fears for landslides are across the entire country of Japan. I'll have a full report coming up.
Thanks very much, Tom. I'll speak to you soon. And there's much more ahead on CNN Newsroom. As the Ebola outbreak spreads, are US hospitals properly prepared? An expert has an alarming warning. And will Oscar Pistorius go to prison? The South African Olympian returns to court in a matter of hours to be sentenced for the killing of his girlfriend. We'll have a preview. And a startling discovery from the 4th century BC will take you inside a mysterious ancient Greek tomb. You're watching CNN Newsroom.
Thai people see the world differently. When we are shy, we smile. When we are bored, we kick. When we are stressed, we meditate. And when we don't have enough, we give. The more we feel sad, the more playful we get. The way of Thai, our way of unique happiness. And it begins with the people. Amazing Thailand.
This month on Talk Asia, we're in Japan, where we meet the famed native Epicurean Yoshiki Tsuji. We go inside the nation's most prestigious cooking school. And with the help of multiple Michelin-starred chefs Kunio Tokuoka and Kenji Mitsuda, we get a glimpse into the country's culinary past and future.
Talk Asia, Saturday only on CNN.
Join me every month to explore vital innovations that can help us all stay healthy.
We're taking you straight inside the operating room to meet a young woman with a rare brain disorder who's undergoing experimental brain surgery.
Vital Signs, Wednesday on CNN. In association with Dubai Healthcare City.
Two powerful storms are lashing Asia at this hour. Indian authorities say at least 6 people are dead after cyclone Hudhud made landfall. The storm uprooted trees, power lines and brought a coastal surge as high as 2 metres. And in East Asia, Typhoon Vongfong is losing steam as it heads towards the Japanese mainland. But it's still packing gale-force winds. The storm made landfall Sunday in Okinawa. Tom Sater has been keeping tabs on both tropical systems. And he joins us now from the International Weather Centre. Tom, how's it looking?
Well, the one in India is breaking down, but fears are, what are they going to find when the sun rises? 4 districts, about 350 coastal villages, are feared to be destroyed. Communication is out. Power is out. They've even discontinued all electricity because of fears of electrocution. Visakhapatnam, there is a naval base. There are 2 million that live there. And this is in Andhra Pradesh. Odisha is the state just to the north, but they had fatalities too. Take a look at the eye. As this moved in, there couldn't have been more of a direct hit. This is just before the noon hour yesterday. 24-kilometer diameter eye. I mean, this is a good size eye, and with winds up to 215, obviously you can understand why there would be some power out. This is a radar image. This is Visakhapatnam on the coastline. Here comes the eye. The winds are always strongest right around the eye, And unfortunately, it couldn't get closer. This is a large eye, and as soon as the winds hit, they lose communication. They've lost power. There are reports, too, that many refused authorities' call for evacuation. A year ago, when we had Pailin move in, just to the north in Udisha, 1 million were evacuated. Now, we've heard hundreds of thousands as it moves to the north. These are the preliminary pictures. Again, the coastline now that you're looking at is to the left. And as you see the video, you're going to see what is basically a marketplace that is destroyed. This is in the city. This does not include 300 to 400 kilometers of the coastline that are mainly villages, fishing villages, and many, they live in kuchas. These are like thatched homes that they know are going to be completely destroyed. 6 fatalities. Again, thousands of trees have been uprooted, and that's just the beginning of our problems. As this system moves to the north, we're going to get a better idea in the hours ahead. Now, our other storm system, which has already made landfall in Okinawa, again, we have 35 injuries. Some are serious. And now we're watching another landfall. This is the second in 2 weeks. And our concerns here, yes, the rainfall and the threat for landslides, because this is the 5th one this season, but it picks up in its forward progression. Typically, that means we'll have lesser amounts of heavy rain, smaller amounts, but faster moving storms coupled with their strong winds can produce wind damage. So as the system moves out quickly, the fear is we could see the opposite. Instead of landslides, there could be power outages along this entire stretch. Amounts of rainfall, remember Kochi? The wettest month in history back in August, Kagoshima as well. But we're getting winds up to 120 in Osaka, 24 hours it'll be in Tokyo, Sendai as well. So again, we're watching a storm system that, Lynda, not only producing the threat for landslides, but power outages as well. And this is just a tropical storm. Enough is enough. Hopefully a good break in the next week.
Hopefully. We'll speak to you soon, Tom. Thanks for that update. Now, the personal belongings of passengers aboard the ill-fated Malaysian Airlines flight that crashed in Ukraine may soon be turned over to the victims' families. Dutch authorities say Ukrainian crews will visit the site Monday to recover the items. MH17 was purportedly shot down over eastern Ukraine on July 17th, but access to the site has been difficult because of fighting between Ukraine and pro-Russian separatists. The development comes even as Russian President Vladimir Putin is ordering almost 18,000 troops on Ukraine's border back to their bases. Russia's media says their training exercises are done. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang is in Moscow with a list of deals on his agenda. Mr. Li said at a welcoming ceremony that the partnership between the two nations had entered a new stage. He's expected to sign an estimated 50 deals while in Russia, involving energy, high-speed rail and finance. It's his first state visit to Moscow since taking office in 2013. And just hours from now, the sentencing phase in Oscar Pistorius' trial gets underway in South Africa. Will the former Olympian do prison time? We'll have a look at the coming days in court.
On the next Inside Africa.
This week we are in Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills.
A new generation of athletes stepping onto a different kind of pitch. Cricket in Rwanda.
Join me and let's learn how the gentleman's game is making a difference in the lives of men, women and children in Rwanda.
Inside Africa, Tuesday, only on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank. Every month on CNN, we meet the rising stars of the arts, picked by an expert in their craft. This month, portrait painter Jonathan Yeo picks 2 ones to watch.
Sometimes I'll stand back and I go, God, you're good. And then other times I think, what a fool.
I fall in love with their faces. It's like that. You don't know why you fall in love, right?
CNN Ones to Watch, Tuesday on CNN, in association with Cartier.
Hong Kong's chief executive says there's zero chance of him bowing to the demands of protesters. The pro-democracy protesters have filled the streets of Hong Kong, demanding open elections and calling for chief executive CY Leung to quit. He tells Hong Kong broadcaster TVB quitting his job will not solve the problem. Meanwhile, there were dueling protests again on the streets of Hong Kong. Pro-democracy activists faced off against pro-government supporters. Oscar Pistorius will soon find out whether he'll be heading to prison and for how long for killing his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp. The sentencing phase in the Olympian's trial gets underway in South Africa just a few hours from now. CNN's Diana Magnay has a preview of the coming days in court.
Oscar Pistorius will hear this week whether he'll serve jail time for the killing of Riva Steenkamp. He's been found guilty on 2 charges, culpable homicide and on a lesser firearms charge. Now, there is no minimum sentence for culpable homicide. It's up to the judge's discretion, and there are certain factors which might mitigate against a longer jail term. The fact that he's clearly shown remorse, the fact that he's already incurred financial losses, he's had to sell his houses to cover the legal fees, the fact that he's a first-time offender and his disabilities, and that he's been found guilty of negligence rather than intent to kill, and the law is clearly kinder to those where intent was not proven. But Judge Masiba may still send him to jail, an inmate of South Africa's notoriously overcrowded prison system. Sentencing begins on Monday. We'll probably hear from the prosecution and the defence their arguments for longer or shorter sentences, and we may even hear from Pistorius himself. That may take a few days, and then the whole process may go to appeal, which may take a lot longer. Public opinion in South Africa is divided. There are many who feel that the culpable homicide verdict is too lenient, that he shot to kill whoever was behind that door, even if he didn't mean to kill Riva. They therefore would be shocked if he doesn't serve jail time. But there are Pistorius loyalists out there who feel differently. Suffice to say, most South Africans have a view. This is a case that has gripped the nation and the world. 4 fatal shots on Valentine's Day 2013 and their horrific consequences. Diana Magnay, CNN, Johannesburg.
America boasts one of the world's most advanced medical systems, but is it capable of treating Ebola cases as the likelihood increases that the virus could spread? Coming up, an expert assesses America's preparedness and its risk. Plus, it's a decision between life or death. Healthcare workers on the front lines of the Ebola outbreak in Liberia are being stretched thin. We'll explain their drastic plan for change. Stay with us.
Does that mean seeking independence? Is it different being a woman president? What went wrong 3 years after the president said Bashar Assad must go? Are sanctions going to do it?
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
Listen closely. It's the sound of the business day beginning. Opening bells signal the chance of new opportunities. The players fighting to stay ahead of the pack. The next big idea being born today. The next big bust being discussed now. Markets rise and fall. The orchestra grows louder as more cities join in around the world. Sydney, Tokyo, Hong Kong and Shanghai, Frankfurt, Paris and London, and here in New York, the heart of the financial world, where the sounds of business beat loudest and where I'll be your partner to quiet the noise and help you make sense of it all.
Quest means business. Tonight on CNN.
The sound of the business day. What a profitable tune.
World politics, today's issues, and all the breaking news. Wolf, tonight only on CNN.
With CNN's On the Road, you've explored some of the world's most incredible places.
Don't you know that I won't stop till I take it to the top of the
place. My story.
My life. In South Africa.
In Kenya.
South Sudan.
Hear Africa's voices.
A way of understanding the world. A door to the soul. In Africa.
In Africa.
In Africa.
CNN African Voices.
I'm Madeleine Nyiratuza, a conservationist in Rwanda. Hear my story.
African Voices, today on CNN, in association with Glow.
I'm Nick Robertson in London. This is CNN.
Hello and welcome back to CNN Newsroom. I'm Lynda Kinkade. Let's get straight to our top stories. Ukrainian emergency workers will be given access later Monday to the MH17 crash site in eastern Ukraine. They'll collect the personal belongings of those who died in the July 17th crash. The belongings will be gathered from the site and from locals who stored some items. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered more than 17,000 troops near the Ukrainian border to return to their bases. State media reports the troops were there for training exercises, which have ended. Their presence has been seen as a threat to Ukraine. ISIS militants continue their advance in Iraq and now appear ready to take an entire province. The group controls about 80% of Anbar. The Islamist extremists have also moved closer to Baghdad's international airport. With a possible new case of Ebola in Boston and the first confirmed case transmitted from an Ebola patient to a nurse in Dallas, Texas, how hospitals deal with the potential patients will be a key factor in containing the disease. In the United States, only 4 institutions, including Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, which has treated several Ebola patients, are equipped to handle their care. Now, Gavin Macgregor-Skinner, Global Projects Manager at the Elizabeth R. Griffin Foundation, joins us from Washington. Thanks for being with us, Gavin. Do you think US hospitals are ready to handle this deadly disease? This virus, sorry?
Good morning, Linda. US hospitals need to be able to detect, isolate and prevent the spread of the Ebola virus. But many hospitals also need to be given that opportunity to say, no, we're not actually ready to admit an Ebola patient and we can't actually manage to conduct in a safe environment the long-term care that's required for an Ebola patient. And at the moment, US hospitals aren't being given that opportunity.
Now, the healthcare worker that first reported on Friday that she had a low-level fever was put in isolation within 90 minutes. The fact that she reported those symptoms early, what does that mean for her prognosis?
Well, again, it's very heartbreaking to hear that a US hospital staff, a nurse, has been exposed to the virus, and we've got to look at why that happened, and again, there has to be an investigation and look at the management and the supervision. But that early detection, that very quick early detection, as we've seen in countries in West Africa, when you early detect an Ebola patient and you get them into a healthcare or hospital facility, they have a much greater chance of survival, and this is good news.
Now, we've just seen a patient in a hospital near Boston claim to have Ebola. The entire hospital has been surrounded and cordoned off. Do you think that's an overreaction? Will we be seeing more cases like this as America moves into the winter flu season?
The flu season is going to again, be another challenge that's going to complicate how we manage suspected Ebola patients, people that have trouble from West Africa, have a fever or may have had contact with an Ebola patient. Again, there is a sense of overreaction at the moment. We know that you have to have direct contact with bodily fluids, which we talk about tears, we talk about saliva, blood, sweat, and vomit and diarrhea and urine. But it's really important that when we get the possible suspected Ebola patients here in the US, we put them into isolation. There's no need to evacuate the building. There's no need to take it outside of the room where we have the patient isolated.
And looking at the bigger patient, in particular this case of the nurse getting Ebola from treating a patient, does this suggest that hospitals in America and perhaps other Western countries are not fully prepared to handle the Ebola virus?
Yes, Linda, and again, it's the preparedness in the management, the supervision and the implementation of the protocols that the CDC have provided. Again, these protocols are in pieces of paper. They're documents that you download from the internet and print out. But then as we go to all the hospitals, we have to understand how we're going to manage and supervise and implement. And that requires training and practice and a lot of discussions and exercises. And we're seeing more and more hospitals throughout the country start doing exercises now to start to be prepared. And we hope to, in the next coming weeks, we're going to have more and more hospitals that can say, yes, we are prepared, but we also have the administrative controls, the waste management controls in place to ensure that we create a safe working environment for all of our hospital staff.
Gavin Macgregor-Skinner, thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome, Lynda.
Meanwhile, Ebola health workers in Liberia are demanding more help, higher pay and better safety gear. Some are threatening to go on strike if their needs are not met. Now, the country has been hit by the hardest by the Ebola epidemic. The World Health Organization counts more than 8,300 confirmed or suspected cases of Ebola in West Africa. More than 4,000 have been fatal. Nema Elbagar reports.
Since this crisis began, the already struggling Liberian healthcare infrastructure has been stretched to breaking point. And now the healthcare workers, the people on the front lines of the fight against this virus, say that they too have been stretched to breaking point. Since yesterday evening, they've been on a go slow. And ambulance workers who have attempted to get patients admitted to this, the government's largest Ebola treatment unit, tell us that they've had to take patients elsewhere. This has become a critical juncture for the president and her government. In fact, Ellen Johnson-Sirleaf is behind me now, attempting to calm some of those threatening to go on a broader strike.
We have to be equitable to everybody, and it takes time. Resources are scarce. We're trying to meet all their needs, and we'll continue to do that. What we're trying to make sure that you get, okay?
So if you have, currently you have 3,000 deaths, multiply that by 5. So you have 15,000 deaths in the next 4 weeks if this is not handled very soon.
So given those consequences, why do you still want to strike?
I don't want to strike, but the president has to listen to the mass of health workers out there. They are angry people. You don't want to have angry people knocking at your doors during this kind of emergency situation. So the president has to listen and act very fast.
A lot has been said about the international community's response, but these are the men and women who have been risking their lives and staunching the wounds since the beginning of this crisis, and now they're asking that the world does not forget about them. Nema Elbagar, CNN, Monrovia, Liberia.
Qatar is pledging a large donation to help rebuild Gaza following its devastating conflict with Israel. Qatar says it will donate $1 billion to the reconstruction effort. That's about 1/4 of the $4 billion the Palestinian Authority expects it to cost. Potential donors met Sunday in Cairo. US Secretary of State John Kerry says the need for aid is urgent.
But this immediate money will mean immediate relief and reconstruction. This money will help meet the Palestinian Authority's budget needs. This money will, we hope, help promote security and stability and economic development. And it will provide for immediate distribution of food, medicine, and shelter materials for hundreds of thousands for the coming winter. And it is money that is going to help reconstruct Gaza's damaged water and sanitation system.
The US is donating about $414 million towards reconstruction. Researchers consider it breaking news in the archaeological world. Just ahead, a fascinating discovery near the tomb of King Philip II. You're watching CNN Newsroom.
Every month on CNN, we meet the rising stars of the arts, picked by an expert in their craft. This month, portrait painter Jonathan Yeo picks 2 ones to watch.
Sometimes I'll stand back and I go, God, you're good. And then other times I think, what a fool.
I fall in love with their faces. It's like that. You don't know why you fall in love, right?
CNN Ones to Watch, Tuesday on CNN, in association with Cartier.
Join me every month to explore vital innovations that can help us all stay healthy.
We're taking you straight inside the operating room to meet a young woman with a rare brain disorder who's undergoing experimental brain surgery.
Vital Signs, Wednesday on CNN. In association with Dubai Healthcare City.
What at times was a movement thousands strong looks at least at this moment to be dying with a whisper in the streets of Hong Kong. Now, what you're about to look at are some pictures that were filmed just moments ago of police clearing barricades from the protest sites in the city's central district. The pro-democracy protesters have been filling the streets of Hong Kong, demanding open elections and calling for Chief Executive CY Leung to quit. So far, he has refused to quit, saying that won't solve the problem. And we're going to take a quick break now. CNN Newsroom will be right back.
Back up in the sky, it gives me time to realize. Shanghai to Dubai, I let the cities get the best of me. So high, oh, time, slow down. Life is magnifique.
Prime Minister, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining me. Prime Minister Cameron, Aung San Suu Kyi, President Obiang, President Aquino. Mr. President, welcome to our program. Ambassador Brahimi, Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius. Mr. President, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us. Does that mean seeking independence, Mr. President?
Venezuela does not need mediation.
How will you fix it then? Nobody can see you getting together with the opposition. Is it different being a woman president?
We rule for people, not for things.
I wanted to ask you what you brought to Nelson Mandela. What went wrong 3 years after the president said Bashar Assad must go? You say the world is better than it has ever been. Tell me why you say that. Are sanctions going to do it?
Every country, including Russia, should make a decision together with the terrorists or together with the civilized world.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
My voice, my story,
My life.
In South Africa.
in Kenya, South Sudan.
Hear Africa's voices.
A way of understanding the world. A door to the soul.
In Africa.
In Africa.
In Africa. CNN African Voices.
I'm Madeleine Miratuza, a conservationist in Rwanda. Hear my story.
African Voices, today on CNN, in association with Glow.
What does it mean to go there? It doesn't mean reading about it. It means packing a bag and going there and talking to the people. Talking to activists in secret. Activists risking their lives for speaking to a Western journalist in Damascus. Talking to people on the margins of the story about how they're affected by the decisions of those much more powerful than them. That is why I go there, to get the story firsthand.
Hey, welcome to World Sport. I'm Erin Hawksworth. It's been a memorable day for Mercedes at the Russian Grand Prix. I feel like that's been the story almost every weekend during this Formula One season. But for all the drivers, this was a very different experience. The fastest drivers in the world broke with tradition and dedicated the pre-race build-up to French driver Jules Bianchi. He was seriously injured in a shocking crash in Japan last weekend. Bianchi's Marussia car aquaplaned off the Suzuka track and crashed into a recovery vehicle. He sustained serious head injuries and remains in critical condition. There is no doubt that the injury to such a promising young driver has had a very profound impact on the entire F1 community. Now, as for the race, well, it was a perfect drive for Lewis Hamilton, who made the most of his pole position, leading from start to finish and claiming his 9th win of the season. It wasn't so good for his teammate Nico Rosberg, though. He gambled everything on a daring pass at the first turn, but he locked all 4 tires and missed off a chunk of the corner, so that meant he led his teammate, but he had to give the place back. And even worse, he destroyed a new set of tires, meaning he had to pit immediately for replacements. It was to Rosberg's credit that the German was able to fight from back of the grid to finish in 2nd place. But it was Hamilton's day. He maintained a very comfortable lead and is now 17 points clear of the field with only 3 races remaining. So here's how it looks. Hamilton has the momentum as he enters the final stage of the season. He's won the last 4 races and with 291 points is 17 points clear of his teammate. It was a great day for Mercedes. Not only did they produce another 1-2, but Mercedes-powered cars hogged the top 5 places, and the Silver Arrows also secured their first ever Constructors' Championship. Afterwards, Hamilton dedicated his victory to Bianchi and spoke about how significant this win was.
As a driver, you're focused on the Drivers' Championship, you know, and along with that comes the Constructors' Championship. So from race to race, you're not thinking, okay, we got those points, that puts the Constructors here necessarily. So it kind of sprung up on us. I wasn't expecting it, and you know, this is history. This is amazing. 100 years ago, they had the race here, Mercedes won, and then, you know, I've won for Mercedes for the first time. What's really cool is that this is the first Russian Grand Prix, and I'll always, no matter what happens from now on, I'll always be remembered for winning here the first time, which is pretty neat.
What a season he is having. Well, it was another great day for Williams' Finnish driver Valtteri Bottas. He claimed 3rd place for his 5th podium of the season, and he also was put in the fastest lap at the new Sochi circuit. It all came in the final lap, a time of 1 minute 40.896 seconds, almost half a second quicker than the 2nd quickest, who was Rosberg. Hamilton was the 3rd fastest in Russia, but he is the one with the biggest smile. So congratulations, though, to Bottas, who was also the lap record for at least a year now, and the DHL Fastest Lap Award. And after the break, we'll be looking at Sochi's Olympic legacy, so please don't go away.
Listen closely. It's the sound of the business day beginning. Opening bells signal the chance of new opportunities. The players fighting to stay ahead of the pack. The next big idea being born today. The next big bust being discussed now. Markets rise and fall. The orchestra grows louder as more cities join in around the world. Sydney, Tokyo, Hong Kong and Shanghai, Frankfurt, Paris and London, and here in New York, the heart of the financial world, where the sounds of business beat loudest and where I'll be your partner to quiet the noise and help you make sense of it all.
Quest means business. Tonight on CNN.
The sound of the business day. What a profitable tune.
After Daniel Prix was kidnapped and murdered in Pakistan, his family and friends came together to work towards a more humane world.
A foundation was formed in Daniel's name to promote cross-cultural understanding through journalism, music, and innovative communications.
On Daniel Pearl Music Day, thousands of people around the world will unite to promote harmony for humanity.
Carrying on his mission of connecting people through words and music.
Join us in using the universal language of music to diminish hatred,
respect differences,
and reach out in friendship.
We invite you to perform, support, or attend a Daniel Pearl Music Day event in October.
Participate in Daniel Pearl Music Day, promoting harmony for humanity.
Oh, I miss him so much.
On the next Inside Africa.
This week we are in Rwanda, the land of 1,000 hills.
A new generation of athletes stepping onto a different kind of pitch. Cricket in Rwanda.
Join me and let's learn how the gentleman's game is making a difference in the lives of men, women and children in Rwanda.
Inside Africa, Tuesday, only on CNN. In association with Zenith Bank.
If any country knows how to do glitz and glamour, it's India. The country's star-studded league kicked off Sunday, and organizers hope it will spark the country's passion for the beautiful game. Sunday's opening ceremony included throbbing Bollywood music, dancers, and a large fireworks display over Kolkata's Salt Lake Stadium, seating some 70,000 fans. Business people and celebrities all in attendance for this one. The Indian Super League has lured formal international stars such as Spain's Luis Garcia and France's Nicolas Anelka out of retirement, but all eyes were on this game between Peter Reid's Mumbai City and Kolkata. We go straight to the 27th minute. The Russian goalkeeper paid the price when Kolkata midfielder Joffrey Mateo is able to easily chip the ball over him. Check out those backflips. 1-0 Kolkata. 69th minute, we go Mumbai City. They can't clear the ball, and former Real Madrid midfielder Bodra sweetly makes them pay with a wonderful strike there. Kolkata now up 2-0. 90th minute we go. And Kolkata finished off a resounding victory when Spanish forward Arnaud Liebert converted for the cross from Tefera. So Kolkata wins this one easily, 3-0. To tennis, and Roger Federer might be 33 years old, but he's certainly got nothing to prove, and there's absolutely no sign of slowing him down. Federer replaced Rafael Nadal as the world #2 on Saturday, and then beat Gilles Simon to win the Shanghai Masters, his 81st career title. Federer's opponent was unseeded in Shanghai, but he gave him a very good match. The Swiss star was broken in the very first game, but fought back to win both sets in tie breaks. And as you can see, with drop shots like that, Federer hasn't lost his touch, and he's playing with some confidence following his Master Series victory in Cincinnati and Saturday's win against Djokovic. Simone began to falter in the second, but he still had enough to force another breaker, but Federer was just too good in the end.
I mean, match could have gone either way, really. Both sets really were close. I thought I maybe was a tiny bit better in the second set, but then all of a sudden I did have to save a few set points, which is huge. And now looking back, then I played a great tiebreaker, so I'm extremely happy. I mean, how can you not be? I remember how lucky I got in the first round, so this feels very much a dream run right now.
Back to Sochi now, the site of the first ever Russian Grand Prix this weekend, where the Winter Olympics were held earlier this year. The estimated cost for that event was $50 billion. That's more than 4 times the original estimate. And it's made some countries think twice about ever bidding for the Winter Games again. Sochi's organizers, though, they think it was worth every penny. Amanda Davis has more.
Sochi 2014 was the most expensive Olympics in history and faced more controversy in its build-up than any other games before it. Just last week, Oslo became the 4th city to pull out of the running to host 2022, citing the spending here, more than $50 billion, as one of the major reasons. But the man in charge of putting on February's games here told me that he feels the Norwegian city is missing a great opportunity.
This is very frustrating, actually, because that means that they didn't thoroughly analyze the real Olympic result, because hosting the Olympic Games, this is the greatest ever catalyst, and you buying the tickets. It's like, remember I told you that magic wand. When you're using it, it's like accelerating all the processes several times that you can jump into the future, and it's really deserve and worth to spend to jump to the future.
Oslo specifically referred to the spending here as a reason that they pulled out. What do you say to that?
I think that they were tricky just to use figures from the media without coming into details.
And 3-time Olympic gold medal winning skier Jean-Claude Killy, who was chairman of the coordination committee here in Sochi, agrees.
To run the games, it is $2 billion. And then it's pretty much up to what you already have. If they want a highway from Oslo all the way to Kitfield, that's 2 hours, they can do it, but they can also manage the games without it.
There is a suggestion that these global sporting events should take a stand, not be seen to be spending so much money. Should there be a budget cap?
I think the IOC is working on it. Everyone is thinking about it, but everyone wants to be the biggest, best, whatever. As far as I'm concerned, I would not mind seeing it reduce the cost without touching the stamina, the glory of it.
That's all the time we have now. I'm Erin Hawksworth. Join us for later editions of World Sport. Thank you.
Now, we have some breaking news just in. We're about to show you some videos filmed just moments ago of police clearing barricades from protest sites in Hong Kong's Central District. The pro-democracy protesters have been filling the streets of Hong Kong demanding open elections and are calling for Chief Executive CY Leung to quit. So far, he has refused to quit, saying that won't solve the problem. Most of the protests have taken place in Admiralty, which is part of Hong Kong's financial district. However, protests have also been held in other parts of the city. Hasina Crew is now at the protest site in Hong Kong's Admiralty district. Senior international correspondent Ivan Watson is among them. He joins us now on the phone from the scene. Ivan, the protest is in its third week. It's been dying down, and now police are moving in to move barricades. Is this the end of the street protest?
I think it's too early to say, but certainly after pretty much pulling back for nearly 2 weeks, now there are hundreds of police out, and they have started dismantling some of the barricades at the edges of kind of this sprawling patch of territory in the center of Hong Kong that the demonstrators have claimed and have demarcated using traffic barriers. So we've seen police removing some of those barriers, loading them into a truck. We have not seen any direct confrontation. And I have to point out that at this time of the morning, there are not that many demonstrators in the encampment, perhaps hundreds, and they're spread out over quite a substantial amount of territory, different barricades that they would presumably have to defend. We've seen some of the demonstrators wearing their goggles, wearing their improvised protective devices, but they do also seem to be very much outnumbered by the police right now, who are standing at the ready but are not really taking any action just yet. Lynda?
I'm sure some local business owners will be pleased, along with government supporters, but what has been the reaction, if you've seen any yet, from pro-democracy protesters?
Well, some of these demonstrators have put on their protective goggles, their improvised protective gear, whether it's rain jackets or saran wrap, and are standing at some of the barricades. But again, their numbers are not very large, certainly at this time of the morning. It's just a little bit before 8 o'clock in the morning here. Over the course of the weekend, the top official here in Hong Kong, CY Leung, who the demonstrators have demanded his resignation, he came out on a local TV channel and basically said that the government's position would be uncompromising. Meanwhile, the student protest groups published a letter to the leader of China himself, Xi Jinping, asserting that their protest movement is not a color revolution, but rather a pro-democracy movement, and they repeated their calls for CY Leung to step down because he was in charge when police used force, used tear gas, used pepper spray more than 2 weeks ago against the protesters in a move that attracted a lot of popular sympathy here in Hong Kong for the protesters. Lynda.
And as you mentioned, CY Leung won't resign despite calls from the pro-democracy protesters. What now for the protesters? Where do they go? What do they do?
Well, it depends on how forceful the police will be here. Will they push? Will they use some of the same force that was used 2 weeks ago, which kind of backfired in the face of the government and in the police? It's a delicate operation they'll make. Or will they just remove some of the barricades and open up some of the paths of transport that have been blocked off now for some 2 weeks? It's a Monday morning. This is when office workers try to get to their jobs. This is a financial hub, and parts of it have really turned into this sprawling pedestrian zone now for 2 weeks, which has made it much quieter. Some say the air has gotten cleaner, it's less polluted, but it's also made a mess of traffic and everyday movement around this very congested city.
Is it likely we'll see talks being held between the pro-democracy protesters and the Chinese government?
No, the talks were called off last Thursday by the number 2 official in the Hong Kong government. In response, the demonstrators called for a mass rally Friday night where they were able to generate numbers. They were trying to re-inject some life, some enthusiasm into their movement. There were definitely